Can you find one meal a week, one lunch, where you're as many as you can, where you're sitting down, and that's what I call a captive moment.
That's
where no phones are out and you're actually asking those questions open-ended, not just how's your day, but hey, tell me something that you found exciting today.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of Dads on Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, Josh Ashford, and on this show, man, we are all about helping dads be the best versions of themselves, whatever that means. And man, I'm so happy to have our guest today, Jim Van Allan, right? Jim Van Allan.
That's right.
I got to say the full government name.
There you go.
Yo, I'm happy to have Jim on here. Jim, he teaches a lot on professional development, especially for our teachers and things like that. But he talks a lot about like culture and things like that. So, man, I'm excited to have this conversation. Jim, I know I gave a brief introduction, man. You go ahead. How do you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I have worked in professional development, speaking, training for the last 16 years. I've been in and out of schools and companies as somebody needs a speaker to bring them in and talk about how to energize a culture and how to have better communication skills and relationships. Any audience you can think of, I've been in front of. Last week, I was just having an assembly of kindergarten, first grade, second, third, fourth, fifth. And next week, I'll do school administrators. So
how did that kindergarten conversation go? Because like I'm interested because I got a 3.5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and like nothing about them says assembly.
Let's just say, so I had music. I brought a John Cena championship belt, like a WWE championship belt. The key is to get them up, talking, moving, engage, asking them questions, chant, cheer, and you keep it very light on the message, right? And it's more about the frills in the show. So by the time we were done, I was tired.
Yeah.
And I talked to the teachers later in the afternoon. It was kind of a double kind of a gig. And I said, listen, I think I'm more afraid of you all teachers than I was the kindergartners I had earlier in the day. So
right.
That's what I do. I do speaking, I do training, and then I teach communication courses fully online. So communication has been my life for a long time.
I love it, man. And you know what? You said that you did a lot of rah-rah and you were tired and things like that. I'm going back. So last night, my 3-year-old, she had her first, it's not her first, but she does an annual dance recital with her dance class. And they had a daddy-daughter dance. And like all of the girls' dances were like 30 seconds to a minute long. The daddy-daughter dance was 6 minutes long. And so once we're done, we got back there and all the dads were like, yo, we need inhalers. And so I get that, man. Like after all that pumping up, it's good for you, bro. But you get tired. For sure. I mean, because you want to turn it on when you need to, right? When you're doing the podcast, you're performing and I kind of do it in jets, right? Were you all slow dancing? Or were you kind of like, busting a move out there? The theme was Disco Cowboy. So I had on my boots, I had some jeans, and my wife bought me a purple sparkly short sleeve button up. Picture it. Yeah, I would say go look at my Instagram, but I'm not sure that I'm big enough to put it on there yet. I put it on my story, so it's gone.
Oh, I already missed it. Okay. I'm going to challenge you to put that as a post so all of your fans can revel in your glory. Revel in me. Is that a good word for it?
I don't know. Hey, fun fact, I'm not good with words.
Yeah, we host a podcast. So no, all good. I'm sure you are.
You know what? I do, but here's the thing. I just get good at asking questions and then I shut up.
Let somebody else. I get it.
Yeah. I'm not here because nobody wants to hear me. Like, let's just be real.
You're selling yourself short here. It's all good.
Am I?
I
might be.
A little bit. A little bit.
You know what, man? So before we started, I told you that I didn't know where we were going to go with this. And I'm just, I can't get it out of my brain. And so this is where we're going to go. And I don't know if you're going to be able to help me with this because it absolutely has to do with culture, right? Especially in schools. And I want to know, how do you do this? And I haven't talked to you about it. And so I know you're just sitting there like, where the hell is he going? I don't watch the news, but if you look in the news, there's a lot happening in our schools, right? And so you look at San Antonio, Texas, the shooting that was down there, 2 days ago, a couple days ago?
Yesterday.
and every time, and which, first of all, that's a bad place to start every time there's a school shooting, because that's a whole different other subject. That's not what we're talking about here. But every time there is a school shooting, I go back to, I think about, golly, I can't remember the book. Oh, Heartfelt Leader. Heartfelt Leader by Tommy Spalding. And in the book, he talks about how the principal of Columbine, or what's the superintendent of Columbine, how they reshaped that school, like not that school, but that community after everything happened there. Right. And so he talks about how, one, how were there kids that didn't feel loved to where this is how they reacted. Right. But then he also talks about, like, what he did is he went into those schools, he made sure that he talked to every single kid and made sure that they knew that he was serious. Like, something like this would never happen again, that you will, and so he built this culture of, like, valuing people, right? And students. And so I'm not here to talk about politics. That's not what I'm here for. But what I am here for is to talk about, how do we create that culture, like, where everybody feels like they're winning, right?
Well, I love the example you brought up. And, that my wife and I were just having a conversation at lunch before I jumped on here about what was going on down there. She's like, fill me in. And I'm like, honestly, I've been trying not to linger too long in that story. Yeah. I have a kid right now. He's in first grade. He's at school right now. Yeah. Right. Like, he's literally at an elementary school right now. And so I gave her some of the highlights. We were talking a little bit, and I said, listen, like, the issue comes down to a whole number of things, but culture is a big part of it. It really is a culture of these students at home as well. And I love what you said about the Columbine story, with how, and unfortunately, we're a reactionary society, aren't we? Like, we do all these things after the fact. I mean,
nobody's proactive about.
I remember, right before 9/11, I was able to walk right up to an airline gate, and I wasn't flying, right? And now it's like you can't even breathe near it. So we're a reactionary culture. But the fact that this superintendent went one-on-one and talked to every student, we need to be doing that every day. So when I go and I talk to principals and I talk to superintendents, and I coach a lot of them and do professional, do training with a whole bunch of them in the room. And I always tell them, I said, listen, your number one job as a leader in our schools is relationships. That is your number one job. Is that if you hire well, if you hire according to your mission and your vision, you get the right people in the place and you get the hiring on lockdown. Trust them to do their job. You don't have to micromanage. Trust them to do their job. And your job now is to manage relationships and listen. And the key word is intake, right? Intake. And that means going out and talking to people. If I'm a principal and superintendent, you would rarely find me at my desk, right? Unless I was making phone calls or answering emails and I was engaging. But I want to be in the classrooms. I want to be talking to students. I want to be at lunch. I want to be opening up car doors. I want to be writing letters home to parents and students and just talking to kids. Because, and I used this joke a little while ago with a group of administrators I was talking to. I said there was a stigma, way back when, of the evil administrator, like from those 80s movies. The evil administrator from Breakfast Club and Back to the Future, where they carry around the ruler and their coffee. They got a little gin in it.
Well, that's because back then you got hit at school.
You could, right? Yeah. So we need to break that stigma, though, where the students are fearful of a principal or a school leader, where you can be folks that have relationships with these students. Even if you're in a school my high school had 2,500 kids, and you're in Texas, your schools are probably bigger than that.
My graduating class was like 1,200.
And that's Texas, right? Everything's bigger in Texas. I mean, everything is. I love Texas. But even in that sense there, you can still, that would encourage me more to be out there and say, I have to try to shake hands, talk to students, read body language. Like, intake to me is not just, we'll talk about that. Intake to me is not just verbally talking to people, sure, but it's just getting a sense of your campus and your student body. Who are the groups that are meeting where? How are people dressing? What are some facial expressions around you? What's the sense of laughing, or just, humans are very energized people. We can feel that energy. So that to me, it's a huge part of developing a positive culture.
I feel like you've like talked about this before, like maybe once or twice, because everything you were giving, I was like, that is dope. Like, why don't we do those things? And I sit on the board of a director for a nonprofit here in the area. And, we just gave one of our CEOs his critique. Right. And one of my critiques for him was like, hey, you're doing a fantastic job. I love everything you're doing. I was like, but I need you to stop being in every single meeting. Like, I don't like your job as CEO, like you said, hire well, and then let them do that and then manage relationships. I'm like, your job as CEO is to cultivate the relationships in the community, cultivate the relationships with the board, so that you know where we're at and so that we know where the community's at. And just like you said, like a superintendent, like your job is not to be in every single, staff meeting or anything like that. And I don't understand why that's not happening more often.
I think some of it is we get stuck in like this just this habit loop of, number one, let me go back. It takes a lot of work, doesn't it, to go out and be social and talk to people and intake and read and it's very comfortable in the office at the desk.
True.
I'm accessible. Behind the computer. Well, I'm here, right? I'm here, but I'm not out there. I'm here, but I'm not here. I'm not everywhere. Yeah. I'm at my desk. So it takes a lot of work to go out and do that. I met a principal when I was on a speaking tour last month, who very new principal, elementary, goes in front of his school every morning and fist bumps every child that comes in the door.
Yeah.
And we're talking maybe, in this area, maybe 350 kids or so. A lot of fist bumps. But that
COVID.
Probably. I'm sure. I said, I hope you got the hand sanitizer. But at least that's giving him an opportunity to look every child in the eye.
Yeah.
Intake. And even that touch, I think that even touch, even just a fist bump is powerful. Touch is so powerful in the world of our children. But that takes a heck of a lot of work to be able to do that when you could just stay in your office or just wave to people, phone it in, and just do it on the announcements. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to. It's easy to do that. It's easy. And in a high school, it's easy, right, to just be an administrator who's lost in the shuffle, or just tries to blend in, or be kind of like the presence, like they're just on the stairwell at the top watching from their perch. Right?
I'm laughing because like I can see that, just like overlooking, like seeing who's coming in.
My administrators in high school, they would ride around on the golf carts, right? And they were always in the golf carts. You knew it. They were zipping through, and they would all stay together in one area in the golf cart and just watch, not really interacting much. So I just think it's a question. I don't want to say it's laziness, but I just think it's convenient, and it's easy not to do it. So that's why only a small amount actually.
How does that play into, because I'm all about making sure everything translates, right? So like we understand how it translates in the schools, but like how does that translate in the business world and then at the house too?
Well, from a dad perspective, or like
I'm just talking about from again, creating that culture where everybody feels love, like everybody feels like they're winning. You know what I mean? And obviously that's going to look different in every other household, but there probably are some like general things that we can do just to make sure that, hey, we're engaging with our spouse, we're engaging with our kids, we're creating a culture of love and things like that.
Once again, it's easy to put our kids in front of a television, right? And stick them in front of and I'm sure you've had guests who talk about this, and have the babysitter be the phone or the tablet. It's easy to do that, just like it's easy for administrators or business people to phone in. You can phone it in as a parent. You can phone it in as a business leader as well. But I can tell you, I try to look for the little moments in my interaction with my children that I can engage with them. So whether that's where it's just a one-on-one time, like if I drive my son to school and do car line, boom, I know I have 10, 15 minutes of a captive audience there. We'll pick them up from the bus in about an hour here. I know I got a little walk from the bus stop to the house. That's a captive time. So instead of just staring off into the clouds, those are good times to ask questions and talk and get a sense of feeling. And at home, the dinner table, like how many of our American families, how many of your listeners are sitting down and having meals together, right? And we do as well. But luckily we're blessed to be able to have schedules that allow us to do
that. Yeah. I was about to say that's a big play.
And we never take that for granted in my house. I work from home and can kind of set my own schedule. So but even if not, even if there's mom or dad or whoever is as odd schedules, can you find one meal a week, one lunch, where you're as many as you can, where you're sitting down, and that's what I call a captive moment.
That's
where no phones are out and you're actually asking those questions, open-ended, not just how's your day, but hey, tell me something that you found exciting today. Tell me something that's a challenge. Where those captive moments and asking the right questions will help you where you are. And you said in the business world is too. Let's talk about that world.
Yeah.
You can still be a manager or a leader who is trying to have some semblance of a relationship with your employees.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to sit there and be like, so tell me about your life.
I can't laugh right now.
Hope your listeners saw that, but where it's like, tell me about your deep, darkest thing. I'm not talking about that, but you ask some higher level questions about just family or just how are things going? And then you know what? You remember, and you maybe come back in a week.
That's good.
I heard you said your son had a game. You're going to their soccer game. How'd that go? I played soccer too. Oh, that's awesome, man. Any problem? Anything you need to talk about at work? Anything going on? And maybe you do that twice a day. I'm not talking about you have to talk to all your employees every single day.
Well, I guess it also depends. Like my office, there's 6 of us.
How many?
I said there's 6 of us, but you go, other offices, there's 700.
Right. So relationships could be, we're talking maybe 30 seconds. I'm not saying you have to go and engage with people for an hour, 30 seconds, a minute, right? You
know what though, Jim? We, as a society, like as a whole, we're really bad question askers. And I don't even know if that's the right terminology. I told you I'm not good with words, but we're really bad question askers because I feel like if we got better at asking questions, then the relationships change, right? Like it won't be so surface level, right?
And we're bad at asking questions. We're also bad at listening to the answers.
Oh,
so here's where the schools of thought come into play. Like, believe it or not, I'm in speaking and I'm in training and I have a podcast, but I fall along the lines of the introvert. Believe it or not, like.
Really?
You wouldn't think so. But what that gives me, I say the power of the introverts is asking questions. Introverts like to ask a lot of open-ended questions. Why? Because it puts the spotlight on somebody else. It doesn't put it on me. Like, I don't want to, like, if you ask me stuff, great, I'll answer. But then I don't have to be the mover and the shaker and the talker and the straw that stirs the drink. I can ask questions and let you. But so, we're poor at asking questions because maybe if you're in a leadership role, you're more of the extrovert type, perhaps. And extroverts like to talk, right? They like to talk. They're much more social, but the introverts are a little bit more calculatable. They can kind of know what buttons to push, what questions to ask that are going to help them to get information that will further that conversation along. So,
what do you use? Do you talk to people about like their different communication styles or preferences or things like that? And if so, like what do you use to help them determine where they're at?
Well, I don't have a certain like test or model that I do because what I try to say is everything is shifted, like in communication and leadership, to situational. So you don't hear much about, what's your leadership style, right? In the 10, 15 years ago, are you authoritarian, laissez-faire? Are you this, that? It's really situational. So I can be a certain type of communicator in this situation, but I could shift and be it in this situation. And it's the chameleon approach where you can shift depending on your audience.
That's good.
And the best communicators have to be a chameleon because not everybody communicates like you or me. So I have to be willing to know that about you. How do I know that about you? How you want to be communicated? Well, I have some semblance of a relationship with you. I've asked the right questions. I've read you. I figured it out. And then I can play to that strength, how you want to be communicated with. Not me. Doesn't matter it's all about communication. It's all about audience. Our children, it's all about how do they best want to be motivated? How do they best want to be loved?
Our spouses.
Our spouses. Their audience. That's an audience, a version of an audience. And that is, to me, that is one of the number one goals of what our listeners should be doing is how do I figure that out about my person, right? My spouse, kid, coworker, boss, And then you just got to do a good job of managing that. You got to be like, oh, it's almost like keeping a record book.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, they like this. Well, they like that. They like that. To me, it's worth it, though. That kind of effort is worth it to me. But I run in a small circle.
I was going to say, why so? I mean, I have my own answer, but I was going to say, why so for you? Like, why is that effort? Why is it worth it to you? What does it give you?
It gives me satisfaction that I understand somebody, because I love to be understood. I love when somebody gets me. You ever have that person, you're like,
I get it.
They get me. They understand me. So if you can know those certain things about people, then they're going to be like, oh, that he or she gets me, right? They get me. They communicate the way I like to be communicated. They motivate me the way I want to be motivated. They don't micromanage me, or they did this or that. And it just helps people to be much more engaged in the workplace or the school or the family or the relationship, because they feel like their counterpart in this is understanding of them. So it's a big deal.
I feel like we talked about it, it takes an investment and things like that. I feel like our, what do I want to call them? Our more experienced humans, our senior saints of this world, they're so much better at that, just because the time that they've put in and invested, right? I was in Atlanta this past weekend, and I was outside my hotel just talking to a old school cat, and we were just talking about marriage, and he was telling me how he knows how his wife's feeling just by looking at her. Like, if she's having a bad day, he'll walk in and he'll just shake her leg and be like, I'll talk to you in an hour. She's like, well, why? And he's like, well, you're mad and you're not about to go off on me. And so I'll see you in an hour when you're ready to talk. And I'm like, they made that investment, right? And so it's just like, how do we make that investment in a shorter time? That's not a real question. If you want to answer it, you can.
Well, I just want to, I'll comment on the example. That's a great example of intake, but that took years of experience and years of getting probably
yelled and
kicked aside, or some scar tissue built up there to realize, oh, okay. When it's funny is that information was probably always there. That mannerism, whatever nonverbal signal she was giving off is probably always there, but he never saw it until he was hit over the head enough times. So, and that's what's funny about nonverbals. It's all.
Oh, look at you! I was gonna segue.
I helped you out there. Yeah. Well, we can go there. It's all. That's the beautiful thing about nonverbals. I'll let you make the link.
Yeah. No. That's. I was just gonna segue because you were talking about nonverbals, and I was like, I wanted to jump back because I know you briefly glazed over it earlier, but yeah, let's talk about nonverbals, and because clearly, what did they say? What's the percentage of nonverbal?
60 to 90%. Our communication is nonverbal. Anytime a message is sent, you're interpreting the nonverbal 60 to 90% of the time. That's eye-opening. Like that is, and a lot of us don't focus on it as much as we should, because we're so focused on the verbal content, and we miss so much of everything, the context all around just the words, which are a very small part, 20% of any communication interaction. So
how do we get better at nonverbals?
Well, it's like anything. I always say communication is a learned skill. And there are some of us that you're born with a tendency, right, towards certain skills and stuff, which helps. But communication is one where I think some of us are born with a better tendency to be better communicators. However, though, we can still get better, and people on the other side who are not as good at communicators can learn to get better as well. So I think that's the first step, is people not just throwing their hands in the air saying, well, my father, my grandfather, my mother was not a good communicator, and so I'm doomed.
I hate that.
Right. So not being, using a generational crutch as a curse, but getting better at nonverbals just takes you being quiet every once in a while and just watch. People watch, right? People watch. It's fascinating to see how people carry themselves. If you have a spouse, significant other, friends in the house, just watching facial expressions and trial and error a little bit. That's one of the number one things I would say is just start noticing people more, noticing how fast they're walking, facial expressions, and then put it into context, right? Put it into context. If somebody comes in the door, and they're putting their bags down and that, and then you can tell they got that exasperated look on their face, and maybe that's not the time to get into the problem you have with your bills, or an issue with the house, or something with the kids. Maybe so you're reading that. Maybe you're like, all right, just like that gentleman you talked to, let me hold off an hour. Let me wait and circle back when they've had time to debrief a little bit. But you've read them. You've taken in that information instead of just saying, well, I got to talk to them about this. So what I want matters most. No.
Ooh. Oh man. That's the kicker.
It's them. That's to me. Like it's all about them. It's all about the other person, the audience. That's the sacrifice we have to make sometimes as anybody, as human beings, as dads too, where we need to put other needs first sometimes to get that information. So
it's interesting that you use the word sacrifice, because I was sitting here thinking, I was like, it seems like to be an effective communicator, right? Because that's what we don't want us to be, a communicator. We want to be effective, right? You have to be selfless in getting the message across, right? And the same thing. Well, no, it's actually, I mean, it goes along with it. I think about the book, The 5 Love Languages, when we're trying to communicate to our spouse, like, hey, I love you. Like, okay, you love me, but you keep buying me gifts and I just want you to sit here, right? Like, okay, you care about communicating, but you're sitting here, you're yelling when you know that I don't like yelling. So yeah, that's just that interesting tidbit, or interesting. I don't know the right word, man. I need to
those books, the Gary Chapman books on the love languages is transformational. Are there more than one? I think they have them now for, if you look, I think there's a series now. If you look, I think with the book, success of that book, I believe if you look, there are others in that series but it's transformational. And I think what that does is it allows you an entry point into conversation with your significant other or your children, where a lot of times it's, how do you get into this? How do you talk about, well, I don't like when you do this or that. It's, it's an awkward transition to go from you come in from work, or you're on a date night and you get into the conversation. Well, you could say something like, well, I read this book, or I heard about these love languages thing, or these and what that will do is start a thread of talking about communication and relationships. And you can start with the love languages and then go into, that'll open the door for many other topics to come up that probably should be discussed more. That's why I love the love languages, because it's transformational. Yeah. No, like here's quality time. Come sit with me, hang out with me. Let's go do something. I don't really want you to buy anything. I can buy my own stuff. I'm always like that. I'm not a big gift guy. I'm not. Really? Like, I don't need that much stuff. I don't have that much stuff. And if I need something, I'll go and get it, but I really enjoy the vacations and the date night and let's go play a board game. You don't know that about somebody unless you ask. Yeah. Well, how do you respond to someone that's not, receptive to, and again, probably goes back to cues and things like that in the relationship that's built, whether that's with your spouse, whether that's with a coworker, or whether it's with, superintendent, with a principal. Like, if someone, you're trying to develop that relationship, cultivate that relationship and understand them, right? But like, if they're not open to that, like, how do you work around that? Or how do does that make sense? It does. I mean, and here's the thing with that is, unfortunately, not everybody is meant to, quote, ride your bus, right? And that's a hard. You can try so hard from your end, because I always say, what can you control in a relationship? What can you control on a school campus or a business, right? And what you can control is you. Yeah, I can't control them. I can't control their reactions, how they're feeling, but I can control my attempts to further that relationship, to ask the right questions, to kind of try to go a little bit deeper in the relationship. I can control those things and how I think about and treat that person. And you just hope some people, over some time, they'll come around to it, right? You hope, because you can't force anybody. And if they don't, well, then right? And it still doesn't, but it still doesn't give you a license to then, just be how they're acting and mirror negativity or their, lack of input in the relationship, but you can certainly, you can't control them. You can control you. And that's a hard reality for some people, because it's like, I want them to like me. I want them to love me. I want them to, well, that would be ideal, but it's not always realistic for everybody to match your level of expectation inside of a relationship, no matter what that relationship looks like, no matter where it is.
I just thought about something. Sorry, I just answered my own question in my head, because that's how it works. I'm listening. I promise you. I swear to the good Lord, I'm listening. But I thought of an example of, like, all like you said, I can control me, right? And so, do you know who Inky Johnson is?
I'm familiar a little bit. Yes.
So Inky Johnson, he's a motivational speaker. He went to Tennessee. He was going to be an NFL draft pick. He went up for a hit. He paralyzed his arm. He can't use his arm anymore, right? And so all he knew was football, and that happened in college. But but he's the type of guy that he's like, can you be committed to the process regardless of what happens with the results? Like, I'm gonna go to this doctor for 2 years. I'm not expecting anything to happen, but I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna do the work, right? Or I'm gonna pour into this relationship, regardless whether you choose to love him back or whatever. But I think about, he told a story, and I just heard it this weekend in Atlanta. He was talking about when he got injured, he didn't have a great relationship with his dad. He never spent the night in the house with his dad from the time he was like 7 to 21. And he got injured. His dad saw him at the hospital, and his dad is like, "Hey, Ink," he's like, "I'm gonna come stay with you for the next 30 days. And at the time, Inky Johnson was living with 5 other football players, right? And so his dad wasn't a believer. Inky was. And so his dad had this process of every night he would walk around the different rooms and check on everybody. "Hey, you okay? Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good." And he never forced his religion down his dad's throat, but every night he would always be praying when his dad walked by. And the 29th night, his dad was leaving the next day. The 29th night, his dad came in. He's like, "Hey, Ink, you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, Dad, I'm good." And his dad walks. Well, he comes back and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "that God that you've been, talking to, that you pray to?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, if he can help you with dealing with what just happened to you, I think I can trust him to, to accept, give my life to him." And I say all that to say that people will watch what you're doing. And when they finally do believe like what you're saying, like they'll come around. And that's a completely off the wall example, right? Of someone giving their life to Christ. But I think that is like, I just answered it in my head. It just like the light bulb went off, because I don't know. That's just how my mind works.
That is I love that story. What a powerful story of being consistent in prayer, but being consistent in, hey, I know I can control this. I can control praying for him and not being negative back, and not matching whatever he was bringing into the house, not matching that, and not trying to be adversarial, right? Yeah. And he was consistent in his thoughts and in his behaviors and in his prayers. And look what happened, right? Yeah, people came around. He came around. That's a huge thing of when I go into audiences. The author I work for, John Gordon, his big book is called The Energy Bus. The Energy Bus. And it talks about how some people are energy vampires. And what do you do with an energy vampire? Somebody who's negative and whining and complaining. And some people are always like, I always ask my audiences, like, what do you do with these people? And some people are like, you kick them off the bus, they yell out. And I said, wouldn't that be nice, right? It'd be easy to do that. But unfortunately, you don't get to do that a lot in your families or in your schools, right? I mean, we need good people and family, of course. So the moral of that is in the book, John talks about, we have to help our energy vampires to feel coached, transformed, and reborn. That's what we can do. Okay. We can help, especially if we're in like a managerial principal type position, where that's what we can do. And you hope that they will want to decide to ride that bus and be on this journey with us and be part of this culture. But if not, that's on them. Like if they don't want to work in that school or be in that business, a lot of times they'll let themselves off the bus. They'll walk away because they're like, we've had people come to us write in all the time with these stories. And some people say, oh yeah, somebody left the school because they said it was just too positive here. They didn't want to be part of this.
Wait, are you serious?
Oh, I'm not lying. No, we have people writing in all the time where, because these schools will do these professional development programs through us, where it's a whole year long, where they're like enveloped in this. And there's some old school people who are just like, it's too much. They want to just clock in, clock out, do their thing and leave, and not have to be invest in culture and be all in. And you know what? That's on them. They'll go somewhere else and be miserable, but not here. Not here. So I love that story. Mm-hmm.
I've never heard, like, I didn't know that was a thing. Like, you're just too positive. So I'm going to have to leave.
I don't think it's a too common of a thing, but it does happen where it's like, this is just too much for me. Like, and maybe they're dealing with something else. A lot of times, like Inky's dad and these energy vampires, I always say, listen, here's the reason why you don't just boot them out of your life or out of the bus, is because they, like all of us and all of you people listening, right? Everybody's dealing with something. Yeah. We all have something going on. Some type of insecurity or vulnerability that's dragging us down. I wouldn't call it a skeleton or a closet, but baggage, right? Some emotional baggage. And you've seen some, there's been some pictures, and I've seen some speakers who will come on stage with a bunch of baggage. You'd be like, this is your emotional bag, and you're carrying it around everywhere. And and then you can have smaller baggages as you go along, and we're all dealing with stuff. So that's why we have to be showing a bit more grace towards people and showing love, even if we don't give love back. And that is, oh man, that's and what's one thing I've learned, you're on a board, I'm on a board too with an organization. And we've had a really tough board member who's just being a pain, negative, threatening lawsuits, just terrible. I mean, just terrible person. And the lesson of my son's Bible, we have a little Bible for them. We read at night, lessons and stuff, was all about loving people, loving your neighbor, loving others as God would love us. And I'm like, boys, I said, this is something your daddy's going through right now, and it's one of the hardest things we'll have to do as human beings is, especially in this world, right? This climate, our divisive climate in our country, is loving when we don't expect to get it back. That's hard. And it's and it will always be like that.
I take that breath, not like I'm not exhausted or anything like that. That thought genuinely like gives me peace, because like you said, you and your son, you guys read the Bible stories and things like that, and they're talking about that, and I'm like, yo, like this is the mission that I'm on. I think I would say I used to be an energy vampire. Some people might say I am sometimes, but now I'm just like, I don't want to say I don't care, but I try to be more, I think empathetic is the right word, right? So trying to see it from their perspective. I volunteer at our high school here at the Louisville High School with a lot of the high school entrepreneurship kids. And it's so funny because now my nieces are in high school, and my sister, they all joke that like I'm able to extract information from them that they're not able to. And I'm like, yo, like this journey that I'm on, like I just try to be empathetic between, my nieces or the kids that are, in school, and just like, what are they going through? Like, what was it like to be back there? And it gives me peace because I get out of my own way. Because as business owners, as spouses, as especially so as men, head of the household, we're like, hey, this is my ship, I'm gonna run it this way. And it's just like, are you? But like there's more people involved. And so what's your wife going through? What's your kids going through? And that's just me going on a tangent right now. That's my extroverted side.
No, it's all good. I love it. I mean, and I love that you volunteer and you're giving back to the students too. And you're, and it's, that we need more of that for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Jim, let's get out of here, man. What, I appreciate you, man. This was awesome. Like it's been 45 minutes. I don't feel like it's been 45
minutes. No, not at all. It's flown by. I love it. When you have good conversation.
Oh man. But what is something you'd like to leave the people with? And then after that, where can they find you?
Sure, of course. Well, once again, thank you for having me on the show. And what I would like to leave people with is relationships are, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And they are worth the effort to expand on your relationships with kids and spouses and friends and coworkers, because we're on this earth to be in relationship with each other, We're not on this earth to walk alone and work in silo. We're meant to connect. And it's worth the effort to ask the right questions. It's worth the effort to get the babysitter and go out on date nights and do those types of things that are going to develop that relationship. Because if you're not developing the relationship, it is dying. And that is the cold, hard truth. If you're not working on a relationship, if you're stagnating, that means it's declining. So that is one thing I would definitely say to you all for sure. And you can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. At Jim.
Do you use all those?
Because
I know people have them, but they don't use them.
I wouldn't say I am a giant fan, but I have them. I use them a little bit, and you can test it out. I'm at Jim Van Allan, VANALLAN, and my podcast is Communicate to Motivate, and that comes out every Monday, and you can find that on all podcast platforms. Very much in line with this one. We talk all about, communication skills related to many different areas of life, including parenting for sure.
Wow. I love it, man. So you guys heard that. Go follow Jim, go listen to his podcast, subscribe to his podcast and ours, like them both, share them with 3,000 people. I don't know where this 3,000 number came from, but that's the number. Like, share it with 3,000 people. But until next week, take care. God bless. We love you. We out of here.